hey, you're in your 20s, take all your wild risks and then get conservative later. I understand the thinking is there's plenty of time to recover, but I've met a lot of people who got whacked in their 20s and really were in the just getting started phase in their 30s or 40s. Hey folks, Colin Richards here, president and founder of Lord & Richards, and once again I am thrilled to be with you today on this episode of the Lord & Richards Show. And in this particular episode, we're going to be focusing in on a topic that's pretty near and dear to my heart. It is the subject of being healthy, wealthy, and happy for your entire life. And we're going to come to those subjects here momentarily, but I first want to start with kind of the foundation of that. The Bible has a lot to say about every one of those subjects. And as you know, here at Lord & Richards, we give you advice, we give you counsel, we give you support, and above all, we give you comprehensive planning to help you overcome the challenges found in each of those areas, things that could affect your health, things that could affect your wealth, things that could affect your happiness. And we do that from a biblical point of view. And so as we dig in today, we're going to start with the subject of wealth. Not that it's the most important. I would say that health, is probably something people would literally trade wealth for, especially if that health concern is life-threatening. But I want to start with the foundation of wealth because your wealth has the ability to change your access to things that will improve your health. For example, access to medical treatment, access to medical advancements, and so forth. So a lot of times when people don't have foundational wealth in their life, they really are going to struggle in the other two areas of great health and great happiness overall. So I'm going to do this generationally, segment by segment. So this is going to be a quick 3-part series that's going to touch on the generation that today is in their 20s. And then the next segment is going to focus on that generation that's in their 30s and 40s. And then the final segment is going to focus on those who are in their 50s and beyond. And the reason why I've got a whole segment here on people in their 20s is because you may not realize it, and Wall Street doesn't tell you this, but the mistakes you make financially in your 20s really do affect you your entire life. And that's because of the miracle of compounding. Einstein called compounding, financial and otherwise, the eighth wonder of the world. And so if you're not using compounding to your advantage early, you literally are destroying wealth later in life at a greater magnitude than you may have ever realized. And I want you to build wealth throughout life. So the attitude of Wall Street and many financial advisors, which I don't think is a biblical attitude, is, hey, you're in your 20s, take all your wild risks and then get conservative later. I understand the thinking is there's plenty of time to recover, but I've met a lot of people who got whacked in their 20s and really were in the just getting started phase in their 30s or 40s. That's actually the more common scenario. I meet very few people who are younger who have built a foundation that they can build on later in their 30s and 40s and take advantage of the great value of compounding. So in this particular episode, I'm going to focus my advice on how to obtain, how to maintain and grow wealth through your life starting in your 20s. And the theme for your 20s should be this: compounding for life. Compounding for life. And that's a bit of a double meaning because I don't mean just compounding your whole life, but also compounding to enhance your life, to expand your life, to even increase your lifespan because of the wealth that you build later in life. So the first principle I want to give you is to avoid overspending, okay? Avoid overspending. I've received the exact opposite of that advice when I was in my 20s. I was told, hey, the good advice is to kind of stretch yourself on your rent, stretch yourself on your first home because you spend so much time in your home. And so you need to really just stretch yourself there. And what happens then is you leave yourself almost no room for savings because you're pouring so much into your rent, pouring so much into your mortgage, pouring so much into the taxes on the property that you own. The belief really is that, and I believe this is a false belief, the belief is that, well, your home is your greatest investment. Absolutely not. I can tell you that. Now, it's the one people tend to hold on to for the longest. It tends to have the longest holding period. And so the compounding effect over time on that value looks pretty dramatic over 20, 30, 40 years if you hold your home that long. But for most people, when you look at it, the real compounding in the value is only around the rate of inflation, which here in America historically is not that great of a rate of return if you're getting 2 or 3% historically. Now, there's bursts and there are markets that have greater opportunity, but to be honest with you, most people don't ever get that advantage. And here's the bad thing is later in life, what you'll find is if you've held on to that house and you love that house and you stay in that house, probably its value is going to begin to decline, even not just with inflation considered, but even just numerically, because the neighborhood that it's in is going to be out of style and out of date. Now, there are exceptions, right? I mean, if you have a house in Bel Air, probably you're going to be doing just fine, okay? But that's not accessible to most of my audience, right? So avoid overspending. And then in this and the next segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5-step formula. I'm going to give you the whole thing here because I want you to remember it using the fingers of your hand. So whether you start with your thumb or your pinky finger, I want you to start first of all with these 5 principles when it comes to how you do spend your money. So number 1, giving. Number 2, saving. Number 3, spending. Number 4, offerings. And number 5, luxuries. If you will do that, and I'm going to give you the proportions of those here one by one, but if you'll do that, your life is going to be enriched. Your life is going to take advantage of the miracle of compounding even in your 20s. And so I want to start with that first one, giving, and then we're going to bounce to the next 4 in our next segment. So first of all, giving. So this applies to all generations, but I want you to get this habit ingrained in your 20s, okay? And fortunately, this was ingrained in me, and I believe it's one of the reasons God has so richly blessed my family, is that we want to start with giving. Now, you can put any percentage you want in there, right? As a believer, as a Christian in this dispensation, we believe that tithing is a good starting point based on the Old Testament principles that Christ himself carried into the New Testament. But based on biblical teaching, we also know that it's kind of the basics, right? Just tithing, giving 10%. But here's the thing, most people aren't doing it. And when I encounter that, I'm shocked because all that we have belongs to God. So why are we not willing to give back the 10% that's spoken of as kind of the kindergarten level in the Bible? You see, God's dealing with his people in the Old Testament was dealing with them in an era when everything had to be written down, right? That's how we work with our children, right? Everything has to be spelled out. But as we become an adult, we begin to deal with things differently. And what the Bible principle is for giving is hilariously. God loves a cheerful, or that word literally means a hilarious giver. So consider expanding beyond that 10%. But if you're not already doing 10%, I'd like you to start there. Number 1, give 10% right off the top. Right off the top, before taxes, before your 401k contribution, give 10% of your income, not what's left over. Now, in our next segment, we're going to dig into the other 4 principles that I just gave you, but I want to start a conversation with you as soon as possible. And I have a fantastic team of advisors that are ready to help you develop a plan to become financially independent and wealthy for life, and doing it in a way that honors and pleases God. It simply starts with a phone call.